NFL Week 4 Power Rankings. So number 10, I have the Baltimore Ravens down 3 spots. They lost to the Colts. It was not a pretty performance by the Ravens. Their offense had opportunities and never really got it going, and their defense, even though it was stinging, it really couldn't contain Minshew for that long. And the injuries to me are really concerning. The Ravens do have a very talented team, and if Lamar Jackson is on, their offense and defense can be great. But like I said, injuries to like their running backs, their corners, their secondary, I think it's just going to be too much on the long run. So I have them dropping down 3 spots. Number 9, I have the Seattle Seahawks back on this list. After the Week 1 loss to the Rams, I think they've had back-to-back very good games, beating the good team in the Lions and then the Panthers. Their defense, I think, has looked improved. Their secondary could still use some work, but they are a young, potentially good secondary, and their run game has played good so far. And their offense, ever since that Week 1 loss, they went toe and toe with both the Panthers and the Lions. I think their offense is finding the stride again. Geno Smith is looking a lot better, and their team is just finding their stride right now. Number 8, I have the Cincinnati Bengals staying at the same spot. They won, but it was not pretty. Joe Burrow still has that rust. I really think they should have rested him this week. Their defense played great. They sacked Stafford 6, 7 times. So their defense is still good. Their offense, like I said, still needs work. The offensive line still needs work. Burrow's obviously knocking off some rust, but it was a much needed win, and they got the win. I still think their team has talent. They just have to knock off the rust. Then number 7, I have the Detroit Lions up 3 spots. Um, they beat the Falcons. I think their defense has just played great this year. They shut down the Falcons running game, which was arguably their biggest weakness last year. They fixed their biggest weakness. Obviously, their secondary, I'm still slightly concerned about, especially what happens against the Seahawks. And their offense, I know their offense still can be good, but they weren't that great against the Falcons last week. But they still have Amon-Ra. They still have Goff playing at an elite level. So and Gibbs looks good, so I still think they have all the potential. They just have some kinks to work out. Number 6, I have the Dallas Cowboys dropping 3 spots. That was just an ugly loss versus the Cardinals. The Cowboys overlooked the game, and they came in sloppy, and that's really on the coach. They did lose Trevon Diggs, and that affected the defense a lot more. But I think that loss was on the coach. They did not get the he did not Mike McCarthy didn't get his players ready. Dallas Cowboys, they pretty much still the same team as they were in the first 2 weeks. They just weren't as prepared for this game, and they definitely overlooked the Cardinals. So that's on the coach, and the players preparing. So I hope they get this. I hope this loss doesn't affect them later on, because they're still very, very talented with a great defense. And they still have all the talent in the world. It was just a bad trap game for them. Number 5, I have the Buffalo Bills up a spot. Absolutely destroyed the Commanders. Their defense looks good. Their offense looks good. It's just a matter of how they look versus a good team like next week against the Dolphins, because they just beat up on 2 very bad teams. But beating on bad teams is part of a winning culture. And their defense, even without Von Miller, Tre'Davious White looks good. Their linebacker duo and safety duo looks great. And Josh Allen has played safe ball since week 1. So their team is looking really good. And like I said, they've always had the talent. They just had to limit the mistakes. Number 4, I have the Kansas City Chiefs staying where they are. They destroyed the Bears. Doesn't really mean much since the Bears are so bad. But the offense finally got it rolling. Kelsey, Mahomes, Pacheco finally got it going. And Kansas City defense, I think this season has just been lights out against the Lions, against the Jaguars, and now against the Bears. I think their defense has been much improved. So if they can get their offense and their defense going on at the same exact team, they're going to be even more dangerous than they were last year. Then you have the Miami Dolphins, and up 2 spots. They beat the Broncos 70-20. Their offense is better than last year, and last year's already pretty good. They get their running game going. Their passing game is still great. Their offense right now is the best in the NFL. Um, and obviously Tua's playing at a high level. Their running backs, but honestly, I thought about putting them at number 1, but 2 things: their defense definitely didn't have their best game versus Russ, even though they did get a couple of turnovers, but their defense, I think, is still adjusting to the playbook, while their special teams has just been bad this season. So those 2 factors pretty much could keep me from putting them up at number 1, even though they do have the best offense. The number two, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. Same spot. I feel like they have not played their best football in the first 3 weeks, but they're still winning by like double-digit points. Their defensive line is still wreaking havoc, and they're still running the ball really well. It's just some like Jalen Hurts passing and an occasional drive that the Eagles defense gives up. Those things, but those are minor. The core team is still doing really well. They're still beating up opponents. They just don't look as dominant as they did last year, but they're still number two. And teams that drop out, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they have to get their offense figured out. They lost to the Texans. Jaguars' offense just has not looked good. Even though they put up a 31 against the Colts, their offense still did not look that good. And they got shut. Their offense has gotten shut out against like the Texans and the Chiefs. Their defense finally broke down versus the Texans of all teams, and Jacksonville, they just have a lot to figure out right now. So I have them dropping out. And then number one, I obviously have the Niners. They again beat the Giants. Their defense continues to look really, really good, especially with Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. The offense, I think, could be a slightly better. Brock Purdy, I think, still looks kind of shaky at times, like the first quarter against the Giants, but he's a good quarterback. I'll have to see how they do against a good team. Niners haven't really played a great team yet, so I'll have to see that. Um, but their offense, they still have so much talent that I have to keep them at number one. So there you have it, my NFL Week 4 power rankings.